Good afternoon. I am here to explain to you the differences of the CX units and the XS units. This covers both in terms of 6.5, 6x9s, everything, in between all the lines. But I'm just going to use the 6s as a reference because it's easier to do so. First off, both drivers have the same equivalent in terms of its cone area. It's exactly the same. So we both have the same cone area, so our efficiencies are relative, okay? And efficiency is based on several things, but cone area happens to be one of the big ones when it comes to it. The second part, that is the most obvious thing, is that a CX is a conventional magnet type design, where the XS is a neo magnet design. Now, with that being said, in terms of usage, the two drivers both have their choices. Like, say, for instance, the CX, because of its mass, weight, and everything, and plus also because of the amount of steel and everything that's on this, your natural roll-off starts out around about, say, 25 to 3K, somewhere around that neighborhood, where because of the motor force that this has in comparison to the motor force that this one has, weight is a little lighter on this driver here, which allows for a higher sensitivity, but its response curve goes out to 5K, and that is a direct relationship of the motor. Both units have the same voice coils, okay? So both of these have the same voice coil, but because of the motor force of the driver, in comparison to the motor force of this driver, you're going to have more top-end response on this one. Now, one of the things about that is this. This is going to have what some people would like to refer to as a warmer sound in the mid-bass, because the Q on this, the total Q on this driver is higher than in comparison to this one is. And so you end up with a warmer, kind of a thicker, kind of a type of mid-bass character. It's not that it's wrong, it just simply is, it's a character of the, of this entire speaker in terms of what its response is. The XS, being that it is it got higher motor force, this has a lower Q. And so it's going to be a drier driver. Now, it's going to give you more performance. You're going to get more performance out of this driver than in comparison to this driver, meaning that you can absolutely just lose yourself in terms of power on this driver. You can unleash easy 200 watts, 250 watts on this driver, and honestly, if you just have the crossover set right, it won't care, okay? You can just go at it all day long, because power compression is going to be less on this driver than in comparison to this. And again, this has a lot to do with motor force. So the motor force is going to be the main factor between these two units in terms of it. So when you're buying these drivers, you look at them and say, okay, well, what do I want in terms of sound quality, between the two? Now, let's add in another thing to the mix. By the way, real quickly, these were originally known, in particular this driver here, the first iteration of these were known as a chameleon, and there was a reason why they were called a chameleon, because you could have both it in a separate mode and with the usage of this pole, which comes with it and stuff like that. You put it on there like this, and then you just simply take off this cover on this driver. The other driver just has the hole on the outside, so this is magnetic, so you can stick it on surfaces and stuff, whatever you want to do with this. Sometimes I just use it as a badge and stuff. You simply put the wire down the middle, and screw it down. Whoops. There we go. And so now you have, threaded that wrong. So now you have a coax that you can be mounted in a door, kick panels, whatever you want to do. This is, now you have that driver capability doing that. Now, what you're going to do with this wire is that you can take the leads up to these terminals right here And with this system, we give you all the hardware, okay? In particular, these terminals, because these terminals are really thin, okay? And on these, it's required for you to be able to put on there. A regular spade terminal will not fit this driver. You have to use the ones that we give you, okay? Now that you connect your, after that, you're going to use these two terminals, and you're going to use those to put on for the positive, which again, it's specified for this because it's actually a wider terminal than normal. So a regular female connector will not fit on this driver. So, we already give you the hardware with it to do so. Okay, so now one of the things is that you also have with this is your tweeter, okay? And the cool thing about these tweeters is this. Let me get this off. This is magnetic, by the way. This is not put on with any stickers. It's just simply the energy of the magnet holds this down. If you look at this, the shape that's right here, this is actually a waveguide, okay? And this was designed specifically for these drivers. And the main reason is for the off-axis response of the driver. To help it in terms of off-axis response. On-axis is no big deal because obviously it's on-axis. It's not going to be a problem. So the waveguide portion of this helps in terms of whether you mount this in a pillar, door, or even in a kick. Okay. So we also have this plastic piece. This is actually designed for old schoolers like me, and it's so you can laminate. So let's say, for instance, on an old school door or new door or something like that, you drill a hole, and then you just simply tighten this down, and it laminates the tweeter into the door panel. The other component of this is going to be, if you want to use this in a pillar, one of the things that I always, because we don't glue anything together. See, it's a fully threaded. If you look at this, it's fully threaded, right? So this was probably designed, I had 2003, 2004, 2005, I think, somewhere in that neighborhood was when we did this. So the other thing is that you can actually take this and mount it backwards, okay? If you mount this backwards, you can actually do this for doing pillars because the shape of the pillar, it allows it to grab onto the outside edges of the pillar, and you can actually use this to do that. That's one of the capabilities to doing that. So, and again, the grill is actually magnetic, and so it won't come off. You can't get it off. So now on to the meat of this, the crossover. Now this crossover fits for both units, for both the XS and also for the CXs, but it is a very unique passive crossover. Now, normally when you look at a passive network, you're going to say, look, I got a choke, some capacitors, resistors. This is going to be probably a standard 12 dB network. That is what most people consider, but the reality is that's not. This crossover is solely designed for the tweeter, and that's it. The mid-ranges, the actual mid-ranges themselves, play through. And so the input and the woofer section right here are actually direct ties to each other. You could actually use the woofer input if you wanted to. The tweeter is the only one that's actually active, and anything happens with it. Now, the way this is done is that on the back of the plate, you're going to have a layout here, and this first off tells you the top section here is attenuation, and the attenuation that you'll see is J1 and J2, and so these attenuations here allow us to go from 0 to 7 dB, and negative 7 dB in terms of crossover points. The second one here is filtering. Now the filtering is a really important component of this crossover. Your standard 6 dB network, it's going to go from 2.9, 3K, 4K, 5, 7, 10K. That is going to be in the 6 dB network. But when you go over here to the 12 dB network, you change that to 3K, 3.9, 4.5, 5, 6.5, and 9K. But They have ripples in the input. On the output, it has a ripple. Okay, the reason for the ripple is so that we can take the tweeter and we can mount that away from the driver. Okay, so it's hard when you move a driver away from, when one driver's moved away from the other one, you start having problems at the crossover point. Now, when Eric designed this crossover is all his, and when he designed this, he spent about a week testing over and over and over in a car. And so what he found out is that he could take this tweeter, mount it in the pillar, mount it in the door, mount it in the kick. And with this one crossover, you're capable of doing all you need to be able to give you good sound quality. And that includes general staging, a good overall center image, and great height. Okay, you've got attenuations that you can use to lower the driver's side down in comparison to the passenger side, because there's obviously going to be a level problem from right to left. And then you have phase problems from the two. And so you don't have to keep these crossover points, don't have to be identical, okay, from right to left. You're going to use, your audio control, your RU. You can do all sorts of different types of tests. RU and audio control would be really good to use because you can do impulse response if you want to, and that will help in terms of setting this crossover. And it's done through a series of jumpers. If you look inside, there are jumpers just like in a computer. And so you've got 4 of these primary jumpers. You have J1, J2, J3, and J4. Okay, and again, there's a reference map that's written on the inside of your crossover. And then over here in this corner here is going to reference us in terms of 6 dB networks or 12 dB networks. And so this is a very unique crossover. It's a very unique system for both for the XS and the CX. But the primary difference is going to be efficiency versus warmth, more or less. I mean, this driver is going to be very dry. It's going to be very tactile. It's going to be very dynamic, okay? But it is not for all, okay? I will tell you this flat out. This driver, it is for more of the guys that really do want good sound quality, something very accurate, the representation to be very, very real, okay? And the second one here would be like this. A good argument would be this way, okay? I'm not a D-class fan. I personally do not like D-class amplifiers, okay? I spent 2 years working on D-classes to try to make them right, but that's not said for everybody. Not everybody is that way. Some people just don't, not saying they don't care, but they don't want to have that high-end, super high-end type of sound. So this driver is going to be similar like it in terms of the way that I refer to it. It's a very good driver. It plays everything the way it's supposed to. It will perform wonderfully. You will need more power on this driver than in comparison to this driver because efficiency differences between the two. But this will give you more warmth, more overall, like I guess you could say happiness, and stuff. You're not going to have the dry, snappy punch. Some people are just simply not tuned for that kind of sound. Some people would prefer something with a little bit more kick, a little bit more, I wouldn't say depth, but more of the bass note to be a little bit thicker, heavier, that kind of note. Some people think that mid bass, it's about how strong the note sounds, type of sound, but it's not. It's about the dynamics. It's about the decay in terms of what really makes it sound good. So, and another good example of this, I got a really good one, would be the 80s drums in the 80s, because that used it was a type of distortion pedal, basically, is what they were using in the 80s, and it gave us a very distinctive sound. They were able to decay, either at the beginning or at the end of the note, and it gave us a very distinctive sound in the 80s. Okay, and so that's kind of what I would say. You get out of this driver. It's not 100% accurate, but it's not wrong at the same time. So some people prefer this character. Some people will prefer the character of this driver, which is going to give you that more of a purist sound. It's going to give you that snap and the decay of instantaneous. So like older school guys like me prefer this sound. Newer kids today will prefer this sound. Okay, this gives you a little bit more warmth. Okay, so that's that. So anyway, between these two drivers, between the two sets, whether it be the XS or the CX, you have a wonderful choice of drivers and setups without using DSP. That's one of the things I can tell you. You can do all your stuff you need to do to set up your stage and everything through your crossovers without DSP. So if you get a single system where you're just throwing in something where you've got one amplifier, subwoofer, fronts and rears and stuff, here it goes. It's very simple. You could use the like I say in Pioneer, they have EQs built in and they have time. They have time delays built in. So you get everything set up first through here, right? Then you go in and you delay, your right to left signals so that you can produce a better sounding center image. But anyway, so that's that. And I just wanted to give you an overview of these two drivers and what is the primary difference and how you can use them in your stereo. Have a great day.